Okay. All right, and I believe we are now live. Hello, everybody. Is there anybody here? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me, or if I'm yelling into the void. All right. Oh, hello, Philippe. Bear Deodorant, welcome. All right, good, good. It's nice to know that you're not shouting into the void. All right, well, while we're waiting for a few more people to show up, let's start off with a little bit of Q&A before we get to the audience survey stuff. Let a few more people come in, so, you know, I'll take your, I'll take your cues for a few minutes. Let's see. There was a question from the Patreon. Yeah, so a member of the Patreon, Mike Rutch, asks, probably an obvious question, what are some topics in history that you would love to tackle in your style but can't because it would make an atrocious or incoherent or too niche video? Let's see, well, subjects I would want to cover. For a very long time, I've wanted to do like a series of videos on the New Deal, you know, FDR's program to try and, end the Great Depression. I've wanted to do either a very long video or even a series of videos on that. But unfortunately, it's just based on history, or at least based on the history of how those types of videos have performed, my audience as it is now generally isn't super interested in U.S. economic history. So as much as I would love to do it, at this point, that's almost too niche for my current audience. So it would be the New Deal, but unfortunately at the moment it's mostly because the current audience isn't interested. All right, Bear Deodorant asks, what's the next series you are planning on making? See, well, you may or may not have been able to tell, but I've actually already started a new series. The video on Zionism in World War II is the basically first installment of a series on the first Arab-Israeli war. You know, it's a follow-up to my series I did on the Palestine Mandate, and it is now a video. It is now the first part of a series about the first Arab-Israeli war. Part 2 will be coming out in April, I think, and it will be about the partition of Palestine, so cover from 1945 to up to 1948 when Israel declares independence, and then Part 3, which will come out in either May or June, will be about the first Arab-Israeli war itself. Philippe Garcia asks, any plans on covering the Ethiopian Civil War in the future? I want to do that. I had originally planned to cover it last fall. Like last fall, I had originally planned to cover it, but then the Cold War channel did their own video about it, and I don't like to steal other channels' thunder, because something that weird happens with like the history crowd on YouTube, especially history viewers, is that when they see another channel do a video on the same subject as another one, there's this like allegation of copying. Like when I made my videos about the Gulf War, a bunch of people are saying I'm copying what's his name, Sean Munger. But it's like, well, no, I had thought about doing this for a long time. Plus, Mr. Beat had done a video about it beforehand. And granted, I watched a little bit of Sean Munger's video just to see what he was covering, just so I could try to do things differently. And I did that. I evaded the conspiracy theories that he was pushing in his video. You know, the alleged conspiracy theory about, the Reagan campaign collaborated with the Iranians to delay the release of the hostages so Carter could lose. It's like, no, that didn't happen. There's no evidence that it happened, but it's a conspiracy theory that just won't die. But anyways, So I chose not to cover it, partly because the Cold War channel had already done a video on the Ethiopian Civil War. But when I watched their video on it, I was puzzled by the lack of like archival footage they used, and then I started looking into it as well and realized, oh, there is not a lot of archival footage of the Ethiopian Civil War. It is, and that's one of the reasons I do 20th century history, is because there's more visual material for me to work with, so that way I don't have to animate or try to draw stuff myself. And for the Ethiopian Civil War, there's a shocking lack, which is why their video about the Ethiopian Civil War ended up using like a lot of map footage. All right, Mike Stad. All right, super chat from Mike Stad for $2. What's your opinion on What If Alt Hist and his YouTube? I have never been a regular viewer of What If Alt Hist, and I've watched his content far less in recent years. I'm more familiar with like his meltdowns being reported on Twitter than I am in his actual videos. It's like he's gone into some weird, very esoteric directions based on like what little I've seen of him. So I don't have too strong opinions on it. I think the guy needs some help. I don't know what kind of help he needs, but he needs something. He needs something in his life. I don't know if he's married or has a regular day job or something. I can't imagine he's spending too much time editing the videos because, well, the fact matter is the level of editing he puts into his videos is similar to that of Emperor Tiger Star, and they end up being very, very successful despite not very advanced editing. See, Mike Stata, he's psycho and poorly researched, which makes him kind of funny. It's like a 3-hour incel rant each vid. Yeah, I remember seeing like a screen cap of like some of his thumbnails, something about like incel revolution or something like that. Ethan in the chat. Fun fact, my grandfather was one of the Iranians who was involved with the hostage negotiations and Iran-Contra, and publicly claimed that he had a deal with the Reagan admin. Well, from everything I've read on it, there isn't any real, like, evidence of it. It's mostly a handful of individual allegations. Like I said, the consensus opinion is that no, there wasn't a deal between the Reagan campaign and the Iranian regime. Now, if you're just talking about Iran-Contra, there was something going on, but I've read a lot about Iran-Contra at this point, and I want to make my own video on it at some point in the future. It's just I want to do some other videos first so that it creates more context. Like, obviously, I want to do videos about the Iranian Revolution, and then I want to start doing videos about the Iran-Iraq War before I touch on Iran-Contra. So I'm definitely going to be covering that myself at some point in the future, but like I said, I want to build up some groundwork first. But so yeah, that's the Reagan stuff. All right, we got about 25-ish people here. Wait another minute, see for people to come in. Anybody else have questions while I'm waiting here? Luis asks, would you ever do a video on Native Americans? It's like, it's not a no. It's like, at least it's not a no on principle. It's just I don't know what kind of video I would do. Because, like, especially in the last few years, most of my videos have been about, like 20th to early 21st century geopolitics kind of stuff. I've covered a lot of Cold War stuff and some early War on Terror type stuff. And so I don't know what I would do with American Indians. Let's see. So yeah, it's like it's not a refusal out of principle. It's a refusal out of I don't know what I would do. Felipe Garcia asks, what are the conspiracy theories that really make you angry? Well, anything having to do with Holocaust denial obviously tends to make me angry, as well as basically most genocide denials. Those make me angry, but those are just kind of like, I get exposed to that stuff all the time on my videos talking about said things, that I kind of just become a little numb to them, really. It's like the ones that get angry are like the anti-Semitic ones that are just very, it's just sort of like, I guess what frustrates me more is that the anti-Semitic conspiracy theories where the person clearly hasn't done their own homework on said conspiracy theory. So, yeah. So, yeah. All right, another super chat from Mike Stad. Asks, opinion on Sleepwalkers by Christopher Clark. I have not read Sleepwalkers, or is Sleepwalkers a book or a song? In either case, I have not consumed said media, so I'm afraid I don't really have an opinion on it. But let's see. Gunnar Walgren asks, you would do a really good Wounded Knee standoff video, as well as from the 70s, I forgot the exact year. Let's see. Well, yeah, so I guess I also tend not to cover a lot of domestic U.S. politics. Once again, it's not opposition to it. It's just I don't know how I would cover it differently than other people. So, yeah, Mike's had a book on World War I. Oh, okay, yeah. So, well, in either case, I have not seen Sleepwalkers. I have not read Sleepwalkers by Christopher Clark. But if it's a book about World War I, is it a geopolitics book, or is it like about like battlefield type stuff? I'm not sure. Luis, many Native American tribes strongly opposed the New Deal. There was even a national movement called the American Indian Movement, though it is rarely discussed. See, I know Cynical Historian has talked about some Native American stuff, at least when it comes up in relation to some of his topics. But I can't say I've delved too deep into those movements myself. Let's see. But yeah, they oppose the New Deal. It's like, it's not too surprising, but I have not dug into the relationship between American Indians and the New Deal. It might be interesting to look into, but unfortunately, similar to what I talked about before, there just aren't a lot of people who are super interested in the, in economic history, so that makes doing anything related to the New Deal, even if it's Native Americans, a little difficult. Okay, I think we have just a large enough crowd of people now that we can finally start looking at the survey. I'll take some more questions later, but let's dig into the audience survey. Switch into reaction mode here. Let's see. All right, waiting on for it to show up on your guys' end here. We have 5 years worth of surveys to look at here from 2020 through 2024. And a lot of these years have repeat questions. So we're going to start with 2024 and see how this has changed over time. So the first question in 2024 was, are you currently subscribed to Casual Historian? Now, 2024, or let's look at response levels first, because this might be interesting here. So right now we're looking here at the 2020 audience survey. And in 2020, we had 145 respondents. This would have been around the time I was like maybe 30,000 subscribers, I think, at this point. 30,000 something. Then we had the 2021 survey, which jumped a good number up, which more than doubled from 145 responses to 313, which is interesting. Yeah. So more than doubled. But then we went to 2022, which actually went down in responses a little bit, down to 291. And then in 2023, this is the big year. This is where we had 583 responses. You know, it's not quite doubling, but, well, actually more, almost about doubling, actually. Just about doubling there. And then in 2024, the number went down again to 508. And that's because 2024 was a less successful year in terms of channel numbers than 2023 was. And yeah, the videos weren't getting as many views, and therefore the survey wouldn't get as many responses either. So that tracks. And there's also a bit of a pattern where, starting in the first year, there seems to be a pattern of it goes up a bit, then goes down, then goes back up, then goes back down. And so if trends hold, we'll probably next year, presuming viewership numbers don't utterly collapse this year, it'll probably be closer to 2023, if not a little more. But we'll have to wait and see about that. But now that we've looked at responses, let's now look at the actual questions. And so the first question I asked in 2024: are you currently subscribed to Casual Historian? We had 508 people. All 508 people responded to this. And about 93.5% of you said that you were. With the, 6.5% saying you weren't. So I find it weird that somebody who likes the videos I make enough to fill out a survey would also not be subscribed to the channel. It seems odd to me, and I'm not sure why that exists, but it's a thing. But then again, subscriber numbers nowadays really don't matter. It's like you'll hear some YouTubers say this nowadays, but subscriber numbers really are just a vanity thing on YouTube nowadays. It's like I've got over 138,000 subs on the channel currently. That does not translate into views. Let me just tell you about that when it comes to success on YouTube, and that is subscriber numbers do not matter anymore. YouTube doesn't care about subscription numbers. They do not care. And so that's not important. Because the vast majority of the views from your channel are going to come from non-subscribers, and that's just the way it is. But so yeah, this year, like I said, 93% compared to 6.5%. But the first year I actually asked this question was back in 2022, one of the big jump years. All right, so in 2022, I actually had the percentage was higher at 97.6% subscribed, with only 2.4% saying they weren't subscribed, but also the respondent and the overall audience was smaller. So this kind of makes sense. And so it kind of makes sense that the larger your audience gets, the bigger all the numbers are going to be. So it went from 97% in 2023 up to 94%, down to 94%. And then in 2024, down to 93%. Yeah, so it looks like we got another. I'll take a quick question from the chat. Magamind asks, "Can you do a video on the 1963 coup in the Republic of Vietnam against Diem and New?" I don't know if I would ever do a video about that specifically. Like I've thought about in the past doing a series on like the Vietnam War, similar to how I've done with the Lebanese Civil War, but that's also very intimidating because the Lebanese Civil War, like I said, that ended up being a 6-part series with a 3.5-hour long supercut covering a war that was 15 years long. The Vietnam War, if I were to cover it, I would cover it from basically 1945 to 1975, from, like the end of World War II when France retakes control of Vietnam up to the fall of South Vietnam. And it would also probably, it's just that would be a very long series. I can only imagine how long that would end up having to be. And so it's intimidating. Tyson Clark says, maybe stop. I'm not sure what you want me to stop. Let's see here. All right, so let's go on to get back to the survey. So the second question from 2024 here was, have you clicked the bell icon to turn on notifications? Let's see, Christian Vibrecht, your cousin Indy Nidell is now covering the first Indochina War. I have no personal relations with Indy Nidell, but I'm not surprised he's covering Indochina War. Or at least I think he's probably covering it on like Time Ghost or something, I'm guessing. Yeah, because I believe they were covering Korea, but anyways, back to the survey. Have you turned on bell have you clicked the bell icon? So about 41.7% of respondents said yes. 58 said no. If we go all the way back, let's see, did I ask this question back in 2020? I can't remember. No, I did not ask that question in 2020. See, Tyson Clark never had a problem getting notifications. That's good. Let's see. So did I ask that question in 2021? I also did not. So I probably asked this question for the first time in 2022 if I had to hazard a guess. Yes, I did. Okay, so in 2022, 37%, basically about 38% were saying that you did have it turned on, with 63% saying no, you didn't. In 2023, that number jumped, the yes number jumped to 42.4%. And in 2024, it dipped just a little bit to just under 42%. And then we get to the question about platform usage. So, platform usage, YouTube, obviously, 99.6% said you use YouTube. I don't know. I don't understand the 0.4% of you that don't. Russian guy in the chat, no, Indy is not my cousin. No relations to Indy Nidell. I've never met the guy. But, yeah, so that's just really weird. Like it says here, 99.6% of you say you use YouTube, which implies the 0.4 don't, which I don't know how you're answering this. But I guess I shared it on Twitter a couple times. And speaking of Twitter, about a third of you use Twitter. About a quarter of you use Facebook. Just under 10% of you use Twitch. Nearly a third of you use Discord. Nearly 2% use Tumblr. My condolences. Over a third of you are using Instagram. About 6% are using TikTok. 3% are using Threads. 0.5% are using Mastodon. And about 8% are using Blue Sky. Let's see. When did I ask this question first? Oh, okay, so the first time I asked a question about which social media platforms do you use, I actually asked this question first all the way back in 2020. And I asked about far fewer platforms. I only asked about Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and then gave a I don't follow any option, which was the overwhelming majority. But then in 2021, I rephrased it again here. I must have asked this question a few times. Oh, okay, no, there's a difference between... Okay, I see what I did differently here. So, in 2020, I asked, what platforms do you follow me on? Whereas the other question was, which platforms do you use? Which is the 2024 question I was looking at. Okay. And so in 2021, YouTube was 99%, in fact, even slightly less. That's just weird. Then Twitter at just under 30, with Facebook just under 30, Twitch at 11%, Discord at almost 28, Tumblr at slightly higher than the previous year, Instagram at over a third, and TikTok at 6.7. In 2022, when it comes to platforms, I asked you guys about YouTube, which was 99.3%, Twitter at just nearly a third, Facebook at 28%, Twitch at over 8%, Discord at almost 29%, Tumblr, Tumblr's ticking up here, over 3.5%, Instagram at over 36%, and TikTok at over 9%. And in 2023, YouTube at 99.7%, Twitter at over 31%, Facebook at over 27%, Twitch at just under 11%, Discord at 32%, Tumblr at 2.4%, so it's going down, Instagram at 33.5%, TikTok at 10%, Threads at just under 3%, and Mastodon under 1%, and Blue Sky at nearly 2%. And then there's the question of, do you follow Casual Store on any of the following platforms? See, I think I had this question all the way back in 2021. Yes. And this is where basically those of you who followed me on other platforms, about 19 were following me on Twitter, about 2 on Facebook, about 3 on Instagram, and then the vast majority not following on any. I don't blame you. In 2021, that was 14.5% following me on Twitter, 3% on Facebook, another 3% on Instagram, and even higher percentage not following on any. And in 2022, that was 11%. So the numbers are going down for Twitter, at least for the most years. As well for Facebook, going up for Instagram a little bit. But then, yeah, so for these 2020 to 2022, the numbers were all going down. And then in 2023, then that trend continued again with most of these. That's probably a product of just the overall audience getting bigger, and therefore just a higher likelihood that people aren't following you somewhere. And then in 2024 is the first time we actually saw the I don't follow you on any number go down a little bit. All right, let me catch up with the chat here. Let's see. Guy with the Cyrillic alphabet. I can't read that name, unfortunately. Hey, I just watched your Sudan videos, and I wanted to ask, how did the government distinguish the Northerners from the Southerners? Surely linguistic differences wasn't the sole determiner. Well, here's the thing. The government in Sudan differentiated people, and one by kind of identification. People were identified on legal documents as what they were. But there's also just some good old-fashioned visual-based racism, as in, if you were darker skinned, like African-looking, they assumed you were a Southerner. That's how it was. And, of course, they also used this, of course, when discriminating against Darfurians, who they viewed as not being authentic Muslims or authentic Arabs. And so that's kind of, it really was a race-based thing, especially, skin color-based race thing. As well as a big heaping dosage of Arab supremacy and Islamic supremacy. The southern part of Sudan wouldn't be the only melting pot of languages, let alone cultures. Were there superficial differences? Was there a delineated line between north and south? But yeah, there was... Once again, there was language, there were official documents, and then, of course, just good old-fashioned, what do they look like kind of racism. Sleepy Joe asks, cover Central Asia in your next videos? Well, it just depends. I can see myself doing videos on, like, one of the Afghan wars at some point. The Soviet-Afghan war, I'll probably end up doing at some point in the future. I can't exactly say when, but I definitely think I'll end up doing that. Magamind says, maybe you can also do videos on individuals like Alberto Bayo, the Spanish Republican exile, who trained and financed Fidel Castro and his M26 group in Mexico. Well, I've already covered the Cuban Revolution, so think I'm gonna end up going back and covering that again. It's like there are lots of groups where, financing Fidel, especially toward the end. So that's nothing I can really. I don't see myself going back, especially because Latin American history doesn't seem to be super popular with the wider audience. I wish it was, because there's stuff I really want to cover there, but my audience clearly isn't super interested in it. Otherwise, the Cuba videos would not have bombed the way they did. All right, let's move on. Let's get back to the survey here. When on YouTube, where do you usually look for new videos to watch? Let me find that question. All right. See, did I ask that question in 2022? I did not ask that question in 2022 or 2021, it looks like. Okay. And I probably didn't ask it in 2020 either. I did not. Okay, so we can focus on just the three. So, when it comes to where the members of this audience find new videos to watch when they're on YouTube, 55% say the first place they look is the subscription feed. Okay, which is because here's things so on YouTube, you can divide people who use YouTube into two camps. There are the power users and the casuals. Power users use features like the subscription feed, but typically more casual viewers of YouTube don't use the subscription feed at all. They go into the platform. In fact, I don't have the number, but I bet a majority of YouTube watchers don't even log in. They go to YouTube, find the one video they're looking for, and then leave after they're done watching it. And so the power users are those that let the algorithm find videos that they want to watch. But I'm not surprised that the subscription fee would be so large, simply because if you're somebody because very few people comment and even fewer people click the description of videos to look at the links and stuff. And so if you're somebody who's going to go click, if you're somebody who's going to dig into the description of a person's videos, you're probably, a power user. And so it's not too surprising that 55% say they are subscribed. That's the first place they look. And that's in 2022. Though in 2023, that number went down to 42%, basically 43%. That's interesting. So, but then again, I guess the audience is larger, and therefore there's just more options. There's more chances for numbers to change, but 42%. And then in 2024, the number jumped up back a little bit to 44%, which makes sense due to the overall lower response rate. Back in 2022, it was about 32% of people were watching on the homepage. That was where they go to find new videos to watch. In 2023, that jumped to being the single largest at 46%. So that jumped. And then it went down a little bit in 2024 to about 43.6%, just below the subscription feed users. So it looks like in these years, the ones that have shrunk the most, obviously, is the subscription feed, with suggested feed going from about 12.5 in 2022, down to 9.8 in 2023, and then back up again to 10.6 in 2024. And if we look at the question of what device do you watch YouTube the most on, let's see, do I have that question here? And it looks like I did have that question in 2021. So in 2021, over 61% were saying you looked at the subscription feed. Let's see, any questions on device here? no questions on device in here or here, it looks like. So device is a 2022 and on question. Or was it? I don't think I asked about devices in 2022. Yeah, so, all right, yeah, that was a question I started asking in 2023. So we can compare those two. So in 2023, I asked you, what device do you watch YouTube the most on? And about 50%, just over 50%, say you're primarily watching on your phone. Followed by about nearly 38% saying you're on desktop or laptop. Another, with about just under 7% saying you watch on a smart TV, then 3.4% on a tablet, and then the smallest one is about 1% on consoles. And in 2024, the numbers switched from now phone actually went up slightly. Desktop went up slightly. Tablet went up a lot. Tablet went up from 3.4 to 5.9, so nearly doubled. Whereas smart TV shrank, which is funny because YouTube recently added a feature. YouTube recently added to the analytics what devices your audience overall is watching. And of course, the overall audience ratios are going to be different than those answering the survey because the vast majority of people in the audience don't take the survey. And so in the survey, although the survey still says that about half the people watching the channel are watching on phone, the analytics are telling me that TV, those watching on smart TV, is a larger proportion of the audience than those watching on desktop or tablet, which is interesting. So let's check back in on the chat for a little bit here. Let's see. Bear Deodorant. Have you done a video on the Korean War? If not, do you plan to? I have not done a video on the Korean War. I was originally planning to do one at some point last year, but I ended up not going through with it, mostly because Indy Nidell started his series on the Korean War, and I was like, well, I don't want to jump on this wagon right away. So I wanted to give that a little time. Otherwise, because that's the thing. Because there's a lot, as I mentioned earlier in the stream, there are some audience members in the history community who can be very whiny about multiple creators covering the same topic too close to each other and just accuse you of copying. And so that is part of my policy of just letting other creators who cover a topic have time to breathe. They don't get a monopoly on that topic. I can cover it myself if I want. But I usually like to give their video time to breathe so that way I can come in and then do mine a little later. So, Tyson Clark, why not do Al Capone or something? That's more crime history. That's like crime history, and I don't typically cover history of American crime or crime in general. I am definitely more of a political historian than I am of a crime historian. So that's kind of why I don't cover stuff like Al Capone or other criminals. Christian Vibrecht asks, I usually listen to YouTube while playing slow-paced games like WoW or Total Warhammer. Yeah, I can see that happening. I will often listen to YouTube videos while I am painting Warhammer miniatures. So that's one of the things I like to do. Felipe Garcia, maybe for Latin America you can cover things like the mess that was Colombia in the 80s and early 2000s, or the dictatorship of Pinochet. Those are both things I would like to cover. And I will probably cover, I'm definitely going to cover Pinochet in Chile at some points in the future, but I don't know when exactly. It's I'm going to have to find a way, I'm going to have to build up some safety, have to build up a little safety in the channel's viewership before I risk doing Latin America. Because like I said, I thought the Cuban Revolution would be a lot more popular than it was. And fewer people know who Pinochet was than who Castro was. So that's kind of a risk. That's kind of a risk taking that. All right. So now we get to the section where I'm asking about what kinds of stuff do you want to see in videos. So let me find the video section of each one of these. There we are. Okay. So let's start with, what area of video making do you think I need the most improvement in? And in 2020, most people thought it was on-screen performance. So the way I move, act, and talk on screen, followed by the audio, which back in 2020, yeah, my audio from videos back then was really crap. I had shit audio back then, so yeah, I do not blame people for thinking my audio was crap. I honestly think that probably should have been higher up than on-screen performance, but in 2020, people thought this. Editing, basically, the way I edit was about 20%. It was at the third highest. After that was writing, and then filming. So people thought, like, my framing seemed to be fine, and they thought the script was fine itself, the narration was fine, but how I edited that framing, the way it sounded, and the way I performed said thing was less than ideal. Then we get to 2021. In 2021, we see audio takes the top spot for people thinking I need improvement, and I very recently have had to listen to a bunch of videos of mine from back then, and I agree with these people. I think the audio needed a lot of work. So luckily I've resolved a lot of those problems since then, but it's rough listening to it. Listening to a lot of those videos from 2020, 2021 really makes me want to go back and remake them, but the only reason I don't at this point is because I don't know if those topics would perform as good as a different topic would today. Followed by on-screen performance, and then drastically reducing, of course, is editing, filming, and then writing. Writing seems to be like consistently the one people have the least amount of problem with. If we go to 2022, on-screen performance takes precedence, takes the number one spot again in 2022, followed by audio, and then to editing again, and then filming, and then writing. And then in 2023, on-screen performance again was number, but surprisingly in second place now is editing, of which this actually isn't too surprising for me because my audio got a lot better over the course of 2022, and in 2023 it was basically not much of a problem anymore, but audio is probably number 3 people were thinking back then, with filming being the 4th, and again, writing usually being the thing people have the least problem with. And in this last year, 2024, on-screen performance has grown to being like the thing that people have the most problem with, and it's the biggest the number has ever seen. In fact, I don't think, nothing has ever had that large a percentage of people thinking I need improvement in. So maybe I'll look into doing that, but also in the last year, I have simplified my filming structure where I basically try to not experiment too much with it. Like, I've got my camera on a little thing on my desk right above here to my right. I'll end up making a video at some point doing like a desk and office tour, though that'll probably be exclusively for patrons, but who knows when I'll get around to that. But yeah, so it ended up being for 2024, on-screen performance need the most work based on that audience, followed by editing, followed by audio again, and then filming, and then writing. Let's see. And what type of video do you prefer? And this is something I've asked basically every year is, do you prefer videos that are standalone or videos that are part of a series? And consistently, year over year, people prefer... The audience prefers videos that are... Most years, I should say, they've preferred videos that are part of a series. So like in 2020, it's 57% to 42% prefer series over standalone. In 2021, it's 52 to 47% prefer series to standalone. 2022 is the one year where standalone videos outranked series videos, where it's by a very small margin, but slightly more people wanted standalone videos. But then in 2023, it jumped back up 47 to 42, or 57 to 42, and similar number this year, 57 to 42. So the core audience of the channel really likes standalone videos, and it makes sense that the core audience that fills out the survey would want this, because, like I said, the core audience members who would fill out a survey are power users, and power users, similar to, it's similar to viewers of, like, say, a film franchise like the MCU. It's like the MCU as a web of interconnected films rewards viewers who watch a bunch of stuff. That's what all the Easter eggs are about. The Easter eggs you see and references throughout MCU films are all about rewarding people who go and watch all the movies, so that way you get the little references. But for general audiences, however, general audiences tend to prefer standalone stuff, so that hence it doesn't require them to watch everything else. It doesn't require them to watch every single video or every single film. And so that's kind of like the balance I've been trying to strike the last couple of years, is trying to make videos that can be basically I try to create videos that can be later edited into a supercut, but where each individual video can also stand on its own. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So yeah, let's find the next question here. How long do you prefer videos to be? All right, yeah, it looks like I've asked that question every single year, so let's set that up. Okay, so in 2020, I had 3 categories: under 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, and 20 minutes or more. Now, you see, back in 2020, if you look at my videos from back then, 20 minutes was the upper end of where most of my videos would end up being. And back in 2020, most people were asking for videos that were between 10 and 20 minutes. And under 10 minutes has always been the smallest, it looks like. But in 2022, we start to see the 20 minutes or more category grow. Yeah, the 10 to 20 minute category shrinks to just over half. And in 2023, we see the people who want videos that are 20 minutes or more become a majority, with the 10 and under crowd shrinking even more so. This, in part, has to do with, I think, just like people, the core audience is responding, in some ways they're responding to how my videos were changing. Because over the course of 2022, my videos were getting longer. And the same thing happened again in 2023, where in 2023, I ended up changing up the categories a little bit. I had 10 videos that were 10 and under, 10 to 20 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, and then 30 plus. And when I added that 30 plus option, that became the number one option. So, yeah, you guys really like the long videos. And granted, I like making the long videos too. So, I like the opportunity long videos make for longer narratives, but there are downsides to it in terms of the production process. And in 2024, the number for people who wanted 30+ minute videos just keeps getting greater. So that's not too huge of a surprise. Let's see, what part of the world do you want videos about? What part of the video do you want world? To the next question. See, it looks like I've only asked that question twice by the looks of it. So, all right, we only have to cover it twice. Okay, so what parts of the world do you want to see more videos about? In 2023, the number one category is the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia at over 70%. Want more videos about that. Followed by South Asia and Southeast Asia. Followed closely by Latin America, which is odd. No, sorry, that wasn't the second. No, second place was Europe, which is kind of a surprise to me because when I did make videos about Europe, people didn't like it. Which was then followed by Latin America and South Asia and Southeast Asia. Then followed by Sub-Saharan Africa, then East Asia and the Pacific, and then the US and Canada is consistently the lowest. And we look here and we see similar results. The results are similar. Here, the Middle East, North Africa, and Central Asia are still number one, though by a smaller margin. Followed by South Asia and Southeast Asia. And then East Asia and East Asia and the Pacific. And once again, a lot of people want Europe, but the problem I find with Europe, so you'll notice that there's another section in here about topics you'd like me to cover in the future. We're not going to be covering that in this video. That takes a lot more number crunching than I'm willing to do in a video here. But so here's the problem with this. A lot of people say they want European history, but the people who want European history topics are so split on what they want covered that, there might be more individual suggestions for European history topics, but each of those topics only has one people suggesting it. Whereas for Middle East topics, it's there's a dozen plus people asking me to make a video about the Yom Kippur War, but there's only one person asking me to make a video about the 30 Years War. So you end up seeing where my attention ends up going because of stuff like that. But yeah. And I think that's all the questions for that segment. Yes, the next segment, marketing. Set those up. Let's see. Yep. Boo boo boo. Yeah, okay. But before we go that, let's answer some questions in the chat. Let's see. Pablo de Silvestro. Hopefully you could do a video about the 1968 to 82 Brazilian military dictatorship. It's a possibility. If the audience starts showing greater interest in Latin America, I'd definitely be interested in doing that. See, Sully or Sully asks, how would the future USA-Syria relations would be? So, okay, so I guess you're asking, what do I think the future U.S.-Syrian relations will be like? And it's a little too early to tell. Because you have the new guy in charge of Syria. I can't remember his name at the top of my head, but he's a former Al Qaeda guy, so it's gonna be awkward. We're not. I guess right at the moment, I don't know what our future relationship with Syria is going to be. It's going to depend a lot on how the new guys in charge react. I'm seeing some evidence right now because there's some of the memes about the new guy in charge. It's the era of Arab socialism is over. Welcome the new era of neoliberal jihadism. And so he's showing the new guy in charge of Syria is reminding me a lot of Anwar Sadat, and how Anwar Sadat ended up breaking ties between Egypt and the Soviet Union, started undoing the Arab socialist policies of Nasser and ended up opening up more to the West and eventually to Israel. Now, at the moment, he's the new guy in charge of Syria. He's breaking ties with Russia, and he seems interested in, neoliberal economic policy, free trade and whatnot. And he's also seems to be interested in having friendlier relations with the West than the Assad regime did. But we are going to have to. This is at the moment, we are very early days, so we're in a sort of a wait and see moment, I think. Alex Coper, your video are great. You should have more views. Well, thank you very much. I think the same, but the quality of video is not reflected. Basically, a video's performance is not reflected by the quality of the videos themselves. It's reflected by what the demand for the market for said video is. And so I can make the best video on a niche topic ever, but if nobody cares about that topic, it doesn't really matter how much. But there's also YouTube finagling behind the scenes of YouTube decides, oh, we're not comfortable with violent content or whatever. That just ends up being something you have to live with. See, Dry Boaks, Europe does have a bit of history. It does. It has a lot of history, a lot of stuff you can cover. And there are a lot of YouTube channels that cover almost exclusively European history. So my suggestion is go to them if you want a lot of European history. You're not going to get too much of that from me. Mihak Zanagai, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that name, ever going to do a video on the 6-Day War? Yes, I will. So when it comes to I have a tendency to jump around in history a lot, but when it comes to the 4 big Arab-Israeli wars, the 1948 war, the Suez Crisis, the 6-Day War, and then the Yom Kippur War, for those big 4 wars, I am planning to cover them in order. And so right now, with my video on Zionism and World War II, the Zionism and World War II video is the beginning of a series on the 1948 war. And so I will be going through that and probably the first half of this year. I'll probably finish that sometime. I'll finish that series in the first half of this year probably. But I don't know when I will get to the 6-Day War. And I don't know when I'll get to the Yom Kippur War either. But this year I am definitely getting through the 1948 war, which I think answers Alex Cooper's question of, are you going to do a video on the creation of Saudi Arabia and the 1973 Israeli war or 67 war? So yeah. I will be doing videos on all 3 of those subjects. I just don't know exactly when. Tyson Clark, just skipping me. That's okay. Where did I miss a question here? Indy is Swedish. Fine, dude. Okay. Did I miss a question? Why not do Al Capone? I don't think I've missed a question from you, but I don't know. I'm human. Who are your favorite authors to read for the 6-Day War? Well, I haven't done too much research on the 6-Day War itself, but I have a few books on my bookshelf behind me about it. In fact, let me take a second here to pull those out. Let's see here. Let's see, do I have any more? Zif. Donald Neef. Let's see, it looks like I got about 2. So I have 2 books on me at the moment that are strictly about just the 6-Day War. There is Warriors for Jerusalem, the 6 Days That Changed the Middle East by Donald Neff. Donald Neff, this is a book from, I think, the 80s. Let me see here. 1984. Yeah, so Warriors for Jerusalem from 1984, Donald Neff. And then a much more recent book, 6 Days of War by Michael B. Oren. That's another one I have. 2 books on the 6-Day War itself. And I've got some other books back there that talk about it, but aren't dedicated to it, like a bunch of general history books of Israel that cover the war, but not exclusively that. And both of those books and more will end up in my video about it. Flavio Cubas, what are some events that are too recent or ongoing that you're unwilling to cover at the moment? Let's see. Well, so I have a policy when it comes to picking video topics where I try not to pick topics that have basically, I try not to cover events that have occurred in the last 10 years. So basically for me, the last decade worth of history is kind of off limits, mostly because I think it takes at least a decade for any kind of decent historical work to get covered. So like for example, like say books about the Iraq War, like the 2003 Iraq War. We weren't going to start getting any decent books about that until, to be quite frank, I think until the 2020s, until like a decade after the war was over. And I've got, in fact, one good book on that on the shelf behind me that I used during the Gulf War series. But yeah, so anything in the last 10 years I typically don't touch. So because of that, I haven't really touched the Syrian civil war much, and I haven't been touching the current ongoing conflict in Ukraine or, in Gaza. I've covered stuff that's related to those things. I've picked topics that are related to current events, but not the current events themselves. See, and Tyson Clark, I asked you if you think Trudeau is Castro's son. I didn't see that anywhere in the chat, but the answer to that is I do not think so. I think JJ McCullough's talked about this before, but the timeline for, the timeline doesn't make sense. The timeline does not make sense for Trudeau to be Fidel Castro's son. The timeline doesn't work. It's a funny meme, but the timeline doesn't work. See, Alex Copper, do you university degree in history? Yes, I do have a bachelor's degree in history from my local California State University. I've got a degree in history. Got about 6. Yeah, so I do have a degree in history. That is that question answered. All right, let's move on. Let's get back to the survey real quick. All right. So the question, have you ever financially supported a creator on YouTube? Click all that apply. And so the answers I asked for in 2020, I either can't or don't want to, which over the years will be the leading question. That will be the leading answer to all of them, and that is 100% not a surprise. The vast majority of people who consume content on the internet do not pay for it, and that's expected. That's part of the internet as a whole. That's just part of it. But so back then, 56% had never done it before. Nearly a fifth had contributed to a creator on Patreon or Subscribestar. Let's see, about 6.4% had done something on PayPal. About 8.5% had bought a product or service, had either bought a product or service from a sponsor on a YouTube video. About 6.4% had bought something through an Amazon affiliate link or something on that creator's wish list. About 3.5% had either bought, a super chat or been like a YouTube membership. And then about 16% had bought merch at some point. Oh, looks like we got an Israeli in chat. Welcome. Good morning to you. It's about 9 p.m. here. Let's see. In 2021, in 2021, the percentage of people who have never financially supported a creator on YouTube went down a little bit, down to 53%. With Patreon going up a little bit, PayPal donations going up a little bit, and it looks like most of these went up a little bit. Those who bought a product or service from a sponsor, bought something through an affiliate link, super chat or YouTube membership, bought merch, or a YouTube premium membership is something I added. Oh, it's 7 a.m. But yeah. Have you ever in 2022? Now in 2022, the number of people who had never done this before went up. Went up, which is, it's not too surprising. 2022 was a really bad year for inflation, so I imagine a lot of people were cutting back on spending. And so yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. And so most of these numbers went down, though YouTube premium membership went up, at least in terms of percentage. See. And then in 2023, the number actually in 2023 for the first time, the number of people who said they either can't or don't want to dropped below 50%. It's still the single largest category, but it means that a slight majority have supported some creator at some point, which is I enjoy seeing that, not just because it benefits me, but it's good for the community as a whole. The number for Patreon, Subscribestar, and other similar platforms went up by quite a bit, up to 26%. PayPal's up, and yeah, basically everything went up. And YouTube membership went up probably the most. Yeah, oh yeah, YouTube membership. 2022, it was like 10%. And in 2023, it was nearly 20%. Wow, that nearly doubled. And I can say this, YouTube Premium is, I think, worth it. If you watch a lot of YouTube, it is definitely worth it. Just not having to deal with ads is great. Though it looks like in 2024, the percentage that do YouTube Premium went down, just as the number of people who have never done went back up to just over half. Let's see. All right, let's see here. Let's find the question. How many of these services have you heard of? Yep. I asked that question. See, I did not ask that question in 2022, so I definitely didn't ask it in 2020. Okay. So in 2022, I asked, which of these services had you heard of? Skillshare, over 93% of you had heard of that. Wondrium was 44%. Wondrium used to be the Great Courses Plus. Then they changed it to Wondrium. Then CuriosityStream, 88%. Yeah, a lot of people started hearing about CuriosityStream because they had partnered with Nebula. So a lot of people had heard about that. Audible, a lot of people, had heard about that. As with Crunchyroll at 60%. Todoist was a lot less, only under 10%, and Workona under 5%. Todoist is a to-do app that has a lot of neat functions. I use Todoist, which is one of the reasons why I asked people about it, because I got an affiliate link from Todoist where I can basically, if people sign up to Todoist through my affiliate link, I get a kickback. And same thing with Workona. Squarespace, most people had heard of that. Hover, very few. Hover is a web domain service where you can buy, a website domain name, and that's where I buy all of mine. And then, of course, there are all the VPNs, ExpressVPN, Atlas VPN, NordVPN, Dashlane. A majority have heard of all those. Brilliant, another one of those services that you see a lot. Established Titles. Oh boy, yeah. Established Titles was here. Yeah, that was before Established Titles went, before everything fell apart there. Then you had HelloFresh, about over 80% there. Raid Shadow Legends, World of Warships, World of Tanks, and then people who'd heard of none, like less than 1.5% had heard of none of these, which I actually think that number should probably be lower if you're this much of a power user of YouTube, but nah. Yeah. And we see similar numbers, and these numbers don't change too much from year to year. The only difference is that I add a few more to them based on like things I had received, based on offers I received or new sponsors that were showing up everywhere. Like I asked about Ridge, Exter, Pacific Steel, Magic Spoon, Aura, DaVinci Resolve, Filmora, Armchair History TV, and Nebula, so a lot of these things. And these numbers don't change too much year to year. It's slight alterations, mostly having to do with which services get a little more popular. And we'll see similar results with how many people have used these services. Skillshare, like once again, most of these, and the largest one, of course, is always none of these at just under 39% here. Let's see. That the number of you who had never tried any of them went down from 39% down to 29% in 2023, and then 2024 the number went back up a bit. Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting. At least for my understanding, it's interesting. Let's see. Dry Bokes asks or says, I was recently gifted a membership to a channel I am not subscribed to. I had not even watched any of his content. Huh. Yeah, I know gift memberships for channels are a thing. I have not bought any channel memberships myself. I value my YouTube Premium membership, but I have never tried a channel membership. Now, of course, one of the reasons, and I personally also don't support a bunch of channels on Patreon as well, which is why I don't harp on people that they have to support me or whatever on Patreon. It's like, but for me, the weird thing about supporting creators on Patreon is just that it's like I personally know a lot of these creators, and that's just for some reason it feels weird, but the world keeps on spinning. All right. Then I had some questions on live streaming. Let's see. Did I ask any live streaming questions in 2021? I did not, it looks like. Okay, yeah. So no questions about live streaming 2021. So in 2022, I started asking about live streaming. How frequently do you guys watch live streams? And so for the core audience, a sizable majority say they rarely watch it. And some occasionally, and then a small percentage say frequently. In 2022, the number who say rarely, the rarely crowd grows. The rarely crowd grew, but so did the frequently crowd. The frequently crowd grew a lot, by 10% in 2023. And in 2024, though, the rarely crowd grew even more, mostly at the expense of the occasionally crowd, but a little bit at the frequently crowd. So, it's just interesting there. And then, of course, for streaming platforms, most do their live stream watching on YouTube, followed by Twitch, Facebook, and then others. YouTube remained the biggest, but lost a little bit to Twitch. And then Facebook lost a lot to other, it looks like. And then YouTube went back up again, with Twitch going down. So, yeah. Then again, that also might just reflect sort of the relative strength of live streaming on those platforms. So, yeah. All right. Then we get to the demographic questions. Let's see. Let's see, all right. I wasn't asking those. Looks like I wasn't asking those. Looks like I asked some of them. We'll see. Okay, yeah. All right. So, in some of these polls, I asked, "Are you religious?" I've simplified these polls over the years. So, something I noticed that in the first few years, I tried to add too many categories to it to try and be very inclusive, but over time, I realized that I just couldn't add enough categories to satisfy every bit of the religious questionnaire audience. And so in 2024, I decided to simplify it to not ask for any kind of like subcategory. So I asked for people, so I combined all the Christian categories, all the Jewish and Muslim and etc. categories into just which do they identify as, just to make it easier to look at. And so between all these years, like we look at the biggest group in every individual year was the people who are not religious, either atheist or agnostic. In 2020, that was about a third of you. In 2021, that went up to 40%. In 2022, that went down a little bit to 38.6%. It went back up again in 2023 to 44.4%, which was higher than it was in 2021. And then in 2022, it went down. In 2024, it went down a little bit, down to only 43%. So basically, a bit over a third, almost half of you guys do not identify with a religious belief at all, which is interesting. It gives me, at least it lets me know that my audience isn't solely appealing to people who match my own worldview. See, I used to ask a question about the political compass, the 4-quadrant political compass, and ask people what quadrant they belong to. And so in 2020, the largest category for this were those who identified as libertarian left, followed by libertarian right, followed by have not taken the test, the compass test, followed by authoritarian right, with authoritarian left being the lowest. In 2021, libertarian right became the number one category, followed by libertarian left, then followed by I haven't taken the test, with the authoritarian right, and again, the authoritarian left being the smallest category. In 2023, I kept asking it, and libertarian right was number one again, followed by authoritarian left, followed by libertarian left, then haven't taken. So the results remain pretty consistent, other than that first year. Let's see. Did I ask that question again? Okay, yeah. So in 2023, I changed it up. I abandoned the political compass formation of the question and just started asking, do you identify as left-wing, right-wing, or centrist? And so the largest category are people identifying as centrist, followed by right-wing and then left-wing. And in 2022, we see centrist is still the largest, but right-wing, it looks like, has picked up a little bit, and as has left-wing. Basically, in 2024, the number of people who identify as centrist shrunk, while left and right grew. So it's nearly so it's pretty evenly split between the three. And then we ask some other questions. Let's see. Are you religious? Let's see. Level of education. So in 2020, the people who have a bachelor's degree or higher were tied with people who had some college education. Either they had an associate's degree or they hadn't graduated yet. We're split even. Followed by the third highest being those with a high school diploma, and then people who are still in high school or younger. So that's interesting. In 2021, I added an extra category of technical or training school. And bachelor's degree or higher became the highest category, followed by some college. Then high school diploma, still in high school, and then technical or training school being the lowest. And that's going to be pretty consistent. And the rankings for these are going to remain, for education level, will remain pretty consistent. The exact numbers will shift. Whereas, however, in 2022, we saw some college pick up ahead of a bachelor's degree. But otherwise, basically the only two we ever see change place, it seems to be is we swap back and forth between people with bachelor's degrees and people with some college. Those kind of seem to sway back and forth, or are the more likely to. Though, let's see, in 2020... Yeah, but in 2023, actually, we saw people with bachelor's degrees jump to nearly 50%. Nearly 50%. And that result makes sense based on the demographics, the analytics, the demographics I get from the analytics on YouTube, where most of my audience are over the age of 18. So, yeah, that makes sense there. And then for that category in 2024, I added an extra category. I added a couple extra categories for unemployed. Basically, that's a different category. That's for employment. Now let's see. Where's the education? There it is. And yeah, 2024 levels are pretty similar to 2023's. See. Okay, how many books a year? This is something I've tried to use at a time as a proxy for level of education. And I've asked this question every single year. And the placement of the three options is usually the same. The exact percentage just change, but the ranking stays pretty similar. And the highest category is people who read 10 or fewer books a year. That's usually consistently the highest ranked, followed by 11 to 30, and then 30 plus. I'm imagining the 11 to 30 and 30 plus are mostly students. That's mostly students. People who are in college is my guess. And we see the similar rankings in 2021, and 2022, 2023, and 2024. So that's pretty consistent. Not much changed over time there. Let's see, for voting, let's see. For questions about voting, are you registered to vote? Are you registered to vote? See, did I ask that question in 2022? I might not have. Yeah, it looks like I only started asking about voting in 2023, it looks like. Could have sworn I asked something like that earlier. Or maybe I was confusing that with political identification. that may be the case. Yeah, so in 2023, I started asking about whether or not you're registered to vote, of which 87% of you said yes, and followed by when was the last time you voted? And I categorize this, it's like within the last year, last 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, in order to account for people who live in like parliamentary systems. Because in the U.S., obviously there's an election every other year, every even-numbered year. But in a lot of parliamentary systems, where it's especially Westminster stuff, elections are a little more sporadic. So I needed to ask, okay, within the last 5 years, because sometimes a parliament can go that long without an election. And so a majority have voted within the last year. And the number grew even higher in 2024 to nearly 3/4 of you had voted in the last year, but that's also a bit, it was going to jump because the US, because 2024 was a big election year for a lot of countries. A lot of countries were having elections that year. Let's see. Okay, there's some questions I didn't ask in previous years that are in here, so I'll just go through those. Employment status. So people who are, basically what your employment status is. Nearly half of you guys are employed in a full-time job. At least nearly half of the respondents. Hold on. The Dank Judean, is the poll closed? Yes. The polls for all of these closed quite a while ago. I closed the 2024 survey on January 1st. That's what happened. Sorry, you can I do the poll every year so you'll have another chance, but this poll is closed. Employment status. Now, like I said, about half of you are employed full time. About 20%, nearly 20% are part-time employed. About nearly 18% are unemployed, but are either a stay-at-home parent or some kind of unpaid caregiver. 6% are just full-on unemployed. About 4% of you are business owners, or at least of the respondents. With another nearly 4% are freelance workers. So, that's interesting. And so, another question I started asking on this one, or at least I think I only started asking on this one. Did I ask this here? I don't think. Oh no, I did. Okay, yeah. So YouTube provides, in the analytics, they provide you with a breakdown of your age, like of age demographics for your channel, but I wanted a separate set that showed my, the hardest core audience, the ones who would fill out a Google form to tell me this stuff. And so I'm going to sort of compare that to my regular channel here with the demographics here. So, of the core audience, the age groups under 18 is slight. So, for the number of people who are under 18, that is just under 4%. People 18 to 24 is about 34%. 25 to 34 is just over 34%. 55 to 44 is 14%. 45 to 54 is just under 8%. And 55 to 64 is just under 4%. And 65 plus is 2%. We can then jump to 2024. And in 2024, the 18 to 24 crowd actually grew from 34 to 36. The 25 to 34 crowd shrank from 34% to 32. The 35 to 44 crowd grew from 14 to 15. And so it looks like my audience is simultaneously getting both younger and older. So it's like the edges of it. So the edges of it are growing, whereas the midsection of my audience in terms of age range is shrinking. At least based on respondents. But let's compare this to my actual channel analytics. So, yeah, sorry, it's a little dark here. That screen, that bright white screen was one of my main lights. So let's just look here real quick. So if we see here, it's fairly consistent, though on the actual YouTube channel, 35 to 44-year-olds are a larger, the older half is more represented amongst my regular audience than survey respondents. So in reality, the people who are responding to the survey are on average younger than the average viewer of my audience, which also kind of makes sense. Older people aren't going to be as technologically savvy, and so they're not going to be as likely to be power users of a platform. All right, any more things I need to cover here in the demographics section? I don't think so. And I think that actually just about covers the survey. Yeah, there are certain categories in the survey here that don't really fit, or at least they can't really be covered super well in a live stream. So I think that about covers that. So I guess now I will switch the live stream over to just being a Q&A and see what questions you guys have. So I guess I'll take a minute to catch up on ones that have been asked while I've been covering the rest of the survey, and you guys can ask more. Let's see here. Yes, the poll is closed. Apparently, the Dank Judean is someone known on Instagram or something. Top tier memes. Ageism horseshoe theory? I can't tell you. I have no idea. It's just my audience, at least the respondents to the poll, seem to be increasing. The people likely to respond to the poll seem to be getting both older and younger. I have no idea why that is, but it is a thing. The middle is falling out. So, I guess we've been here for about an hour and a half now, so if there are any more questions people would like to ask, feel free to ask them. I have, feel free to ask. If not, give you a few minutes to load your questions into the chat or any of the other places I'm accepting questions for this. The Patreon, the Discord. Though the Patreon and Discord obviously are meant for Patreon members. I'm thinking about opening up the Patreon to the public at some point this year, but I'm not sure when. I would need to find some reliable Discord mods amongst my patrons to do something like that. So that's going to be a while before I can do that. The Jank Judean. I only joined recently, so not sure what's been asked already, but do you have any big projects coming up which you can reveal? Well, I revealed a little bit earlier that I am working on a series about the first Arab-Israeli war, the 1948 war that created the state of Israel. The Zionism in World War II was the first installment of that series. The plan is for it to be a 3-part series, with part 2 covering the partition of Palestine, covering 1945 to 48, and then part 3 covering the first Arab-Israeli war. Other than that, this year I am definitely relying a lot more on the polls. I'm relying a lot more on the audience survey to pick topics. Because what I'm doing a lot this year for picking video topics is I'm looking at the audience survey to see what topics a lot of people are asking for within a certain geographic area. And then I go to the community tab, or the community tab section of YouTube, where I will post a poll asking my audience hey, which of these 4 topics are you most interested in seeing, so that way I know what topics I should probably put more effort into. Because this year I'm really pushing a lot to grow the channel this year, and to do that you need videos that are on popular topics, or at least topics that your audience really wants to see. And so I am waiting to see. There are certain topics, and so because of that, I'm sort of kind of hoping the audience picks the topics I want, but we'll see. They've done that with some topics and not with others. But, yeah, it's like, I know for a fact I am going to be doing the first Arab-Israeli war this year. That is definitely happening. So, all right. Well, unless there are any more questions, I think at about an hour and 37 minutes that I might call it here. So, unless any last second questions, going once, going twice. No more? Okay then. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming to the live stream. I really appreciate it. Appreciate you guys asking questions. Appreciate the super chats. And and for all those of you who were around last year when I failed to do this live stream with last year's survey, I thank you guys for your extreme patience. I was having a lot of technical issues last year, and I managed to finally get those resolved tonight. So thank you all for watching the stream. And there will hopefully be a new video coming out next week. So until then, I'll see you next time.